This is the injury report presented by NYU Langone Health. The Knicks won Game 2 against the Pacers, but two of their stars left the court at some point with injury. So let's talk with Dr. Guillem Gonzalez-Lomas of NYU Langone Sports Medicine Center about Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby. Doc is up. Doc, you feeling the energy in the city today? Up 2-0.
Absolutely,
let's go,
man.
baby.
It's a good time to be from New York. You got the Knicks, you got the Rangers, playoffs. Nothing better than that.
All right, Doc, let me calm down a little bit, and let's get into this injury report because we saw Jalen Brunson leave the game, but he came back after a right foot injury, and OG left and never came back with what the team is calling a sore left hamstring at this point. When we talk about these soft tissue injuries like a hamstring, these things just don't go away. So what's the worst and best case scenario for OG and the Knicks at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's never a good sign when you see somebody clutch their hamstring, right? Or that area in their butt after landing or maybe overstretching it. Hard to know what it is. If you ask me, best and worst case scenario, best case, you're looking at something like a spasm, right? It's just got a little spasm. Training room work, and hopefully over the next day or two it calms down. But I'd have to say, it is a little concerning that he had to leave the game and that he couldn't come back. And, you really have to assume that there's probably an element of a strain there. There's a little bit of damage to the muscle. Again, this is purely speculative, but certainly something we'd be concerned about.
Yeah, because, players can run their hamstrings into the ground, Doc. OG missed a lot of time with his elbow, and he's logged a lot of minutes since. So do you think fatigue could have been a factor in that injury?
It's really interesting that you bring that up because there are a lot of risk factors for hamstring injuries, but probably the most important one is fatigue. Now, these guys are elite athletes. They're primed. They're ready. It's the postseason, but they're still humans. They still have, all of the limitations that a human has, and it's certainly playing at this level, this intensity. We know how hard the Knicks are working, especially on defense. So you have to think there is a possibility that factors into it. At the same time, these things can happen, right? It is a game with other people, with a ball that's moving very quickly, and sometimes it's just the way you land, you're a little bit off, and these things can happen. So there's the kind of freak component of it. It's just something that is a part of the game. But certainly someone getting back and trying to catch up with their fitness at this level of the season, the postseason, the potential for fatigue to be a component is there.
You talked about the best case and the worst case. Let's say he's somewhere in between. They play again Friday. That's just 1 day of rest. Where do you think he could be percentage-wise in terms of that hamstring?
Yeah. Well, look, the Knicks medical staff is phenomenal, and I'm sure what they've done is really dug deep, done a deep dive into what this injury is. There's imaging, probably an MRI, ultrasound. They're trying to get a sense of, is there any structural damage? Is there any soft tissue damage here? And they're going to get a better idea once they get some objective findings about how long this might be. Again, just going by that acute moment of hand to thigh, hand to hamstring, you've got to think there's probably something a little bit structural there, and it's probably going to be some games. It's hard to know exactly what until you have that imaging and those findings, and then you corroborate that with how the player's feeling.
Doc, as a former pro athlete, it's like we saw the same thing. Like you could see one thing when someone pulls up a hamstring and it's just a strain, they're just limping. But as soon as I saw him grab it, I knew something was going on right there. So thanks for kind of giving your expertise on that, even though at this time it's just a sore right hamstring the team has put out there. Let's talk about Jalen Brunson, Doc, because he left. Didn't play in the second half, in the second quarter, came out in the second half and put on a show. The Knicks aren't saying anything about how severe the right foot injury is or was, but from what you saw, what could have happened? And does the fact that he played the entire second half means that he could be good for Game 3?
Talk about heroic. I mean, coming out to standing ovation and then performing like he did in the second half, just really impressive and speaks to the kind of competitor that Jalen Brunson is. You know, it's interesting. After the fact, there was a lot of investigation into what was the actual event. A lot of people had different theories about the moment where his right foot got tweaked. But in some ways, that's a good thing because it means there wasn't an obvious moment where something bad happened, where you saw a real mechanical failure of his foot. So you've got to think if he came back, certainly reassuring, and may have just jammed the foot up a little bit. Yeah, that's obviously not a technical term, but you could say a kind of a minor sprain, maybe a minor strain of one of the ligaments or small muscles of the foot. But very reassuring that he was able to come back and then play at the level that he did. Obviously, you got to check him after the game. The adrenaline's calmed down, see how he is cold. But I would be quite reassured about his ability to come back, in the short term.
He's the king in New York right now. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the fatigue of this team. They played 8 players last night. And Josh Hart, again, played 48 minutes for the 4th time in 8 games this playoffs. Is this sustainable for Josh, all heart, all gas? Or does Tibbs need to sit him down a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, there's nothing written in nature that says that you can only play 48 minutes of basketball or else your body breaks down. And there's certainly some guys that are just Iron Men. They can go out there and they just have a body that can withstand that level of punishment. But no question, you have to factor this in. You've got to be smart and strategic. We do know that the intensity at which the Knicks are playing and the fact that this is the postseason, that is going to certainly ramp up the risk of having some overuse injury. We just talked about hamstrings and how fatigue is a risk factor for hamstring injuries. It really is a risk factor for all kinds of injuries. The body just misses that timing by even just a fraction of a second, and then that can lead to an injury. So I think it's something you've got to consider. It's complex. You obviously want Josh Hart out there as much as possible, but you want to make sure that you titrate his efforts so that you have him for as long as possible.
Doc, I play full court pickup games, and I'm done by the 5th point. I don't know how this man continues to go out there and play a full NBA playoff game. Absolutely, man. Well, thanks for coming on with us. That was fun, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great to be here.